Providing opportunities for earned legalization was our first priority, or I should say our first overarching principle. And within that principle, we listed three key priorities. So that was addressing the situation of dreamers, TPS holders, temporary protected status holders, and undocumented essential workers. These are all people who are vital parts of our communities. Many have lived here for decades, for a long time, and they're forced to live in the shadows. Either they're in temporary status, in limbo in the case of dreamers and TPS holders, or they're undocumented in the case of essential workers who have been so important in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic in particular. And what we found is the Biden administration has largely followed through on supporting opportunities for these populations to access legalization. So when it comes to legislation, the administration has supported the U.S. Citizenship Act, and the BBB reconciliation bill as well included relief for these populations, but also smaller, more targeted proposals that have gotten real bipartisan support, like the Dream and Promise Act, which passed the House last year, and the Farm Workforce Modernization Act as well, which also passed the House with bipartisan support. And there have also been some executive actions the administration has taken. New TPS designations have resulted in over 400,000 additional people having access to protected status. There have been some executive actions in terms of rules protecting the DACA program that many dreamers use to access protection, which remains under threat from the courts, by the way. But overall, we concluded that administration has only made some progress in this area. Despite some of the support for legalization proposals, reality is none have actually passed Congress. And the administration really needs to continue to make this a priority, working with Congress to pass real legislative reform in year two if it wants to make progress in this area. So expanding opportunities for legal immigration was our second priority. And within that, we focused on lifting some of the many restrictions from the previous administration, but also addressing these lengthy green card and USCIS benefits backlogs that had really been plaguing our immigration system for years and years. They were worsened under Trump, but they've been problems for a long time. And what we found is that the administration has made some really profound changes in this area and in the way the president has approached the legal immigration system. It's been really proactive in ending the Trump administration's many travel bans and immigration restrictions. And in terms of USCIS processing, we outlined 8 key steps the administration has taken already to really improve processing services. All that said, though, ultimately, backlogs at USCIS remain over 8 million. We learned that recently. Green card backlogs are over 5 million if you combine family-based and employment-based. Some of those affected by Trump's travel bans are still without status, despite those bans ending. And really the whole system has to operate at a more efficient rate. And so, we did conclude the administration has made substantial progress here, as I mentioned, but there are fundamental problems that remain. And we have to see the administration build on that progress in year two if we really want to start getting at the key problems in the system that have been plaguing our immigration system for so many years. So the treatment of vulnerable migrants was really a key priority for us. One, we actually did a separate resource focused just on that. Within that broad principle, we focused on 4 smaller areas. The first was reuniting families that have been separated at the border under the Trump administration. Rebuilding a functioning asylum system was the second. Improving detention conditions, which really were very bad, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic over the past couple of years, and also restoring refugee resettlement, which cratered under the previous administration. And in conclusion, when we sort of look at all these 4 principles together, we found the administration has only made some progress in this area. And we actually highlighted some areas where the administration has even taken a step backwards. Diving into the specifics, there has been some really good work in terms of reuniting families that were separated under the Trump administration, setting some aspirational refugee resettlement goals and beginning to rebuild that program. But we really have not yet succeeded in rebuilding a functioning and humane asylum system. We continue to use a rule called Title 42 at the border, which results in the mass expulsion of migrants, often without allowing them any access to the asylum system, even if they have a legitimate claim for legal protection. And when it comes to refugees, there's been progress, but the actual number of refugees who are resettled each year is at record lows right now and continues to be under the Biden administration. We need to continue to invest in and build capacity of our humanitarian immigration system, particularly as these forced migration crises flare abroad. Our 4th principle was focused on border security. And it's really important to point out first that the border is more secure than it's ever been. Border communities are extremely safe. and they have been for many, many years. And with all that being said, that doesn't mean there aren't still real challenges at the border. Um, you know, many of our policies, like Title 42 at the border, continue to play right into the hands of the cartels. We just don't do a good enough job of screening vehicles and entrance at official crossing points, at ports of entry, they're called, because that's actually where the majority of hard drugs get smuggled across the border when you look at the data. So we concluded that the Biden administration has made some progress here in terms of border security, ending some unnecessary border wall construction, reinvesting in more effective border security. Actually, the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure agreement late last year provided a lot of funding for ports of entry, which, as I mentioned, is a real key issue for us. But ultimately, we still face a real border management problem. We need to find a way to efficiently, humanely, and securely process large numbers of arrivals, which continue to be at high numbers. They were in 2019 under the Trump administration. They are now under the Biden administration. And we still have to address some of these security concerns that persist at ports of entry as well. Within this priority principle of focusing on enforcing immigration laws, we focused on a couple different areas. The first was improving the immigration court system, which remains heavily backlogged. The next was instituting interior enforcement priorities, something that the Obama administration did to pretty good effect. The Trump administration pretty much eliminated those, and we were looking for the Biden administration to re-implement them or to implement additional ones even. And then lastly was ending the overcriminalization of immigrants in our immigration system, both in the interior and at the border. And what we concluded is that there has been substantial progress in this area, particularly when it comes to setting new immigration enforcement priorities. As I mentioned, the Biden administration is really focusing its limited resources on national and public security threats, on recent border crossers, no longer engaging in some of these enforcement actions that pick up people who were not the initial targets, called collateral arrests, no longer engaging in these mass worksite enforcement raids or immigration enforcement actions at churches, daycares, schools. We really have a more targeted interior enforcement approach that I think has been really effective. And that's a real positive step. There have also been, some changes to the immigration court system. They're pretty new, nascent. Some even haven't been implemented yet, just proposed. But it's important steps in the right direction. Although when it comes to immigration courts, again here, as I think has become a theme, some of this will require Congress to act to create real change.